The text came in at 9:14 on a Tuesday night. I still remember the exact time because I was standing at the kitchen counter, holding a cup of tea that had already gone cold, and I watched the three dots appear and disappear 3 times before the message finally landed. It was from my mother, Claire. Please don't come to the anniversary party this Saturday. It's easier this way. You understand, I read it once. Then I read it again. Then I set the phone face down on the counter, very gently, the way you put down something you're afraid might break, and I stood there in the quiet of my own kitchen, and I did not cry. 40 years of marriage. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary. A party at the lakeside hall that my brother Daniel had been bragging about for months. And I, their oldest daughter, the one who had paid for the catering deposit without telling a single soul, was being asked, politely, to stay home. So I stayed, but not for the reason they thought. Because 3 days later, in front of 200 guests, my mother would stand at that party holding a microphone, and she would say my name into it, and her voice would crack. And not one person in that room would understand why. Let me take you back. Because if I tell you the ending now, you'll hate them, and I need you to understand them first, the way it took me 52 years to understand them. My name is Claire. I'm 52 years old. I am the kind of woman the world walks past without noticing. I'm not loud. I never learned how to be. In a family of people who took up space, my father with his booming laugh, my mother with her opinions, my brother Daniel who could charm a stone. I was the quiet one. The responsible one. The one who remembered birthdays and refilled the prescriptions and showed up early to set up chairs. For most of my life, I told myself that being needed was the same thing as being loved. It is not. When I was 34, my father had his first heart attack. I was the one who drove him to every appointment for the next year. 11 months of Tuesday mornings, sitting in waiting rooms with bad coffee, learning the names of his medications better than he knew them himself. Daniel sent flowers. Once. They were beautiful flowers, I'll give him that. Everyone at the hospital said so, and that right there is the story of my family in a single sentence. I did the work. Daniel got the flowers. I used to think it didn't matter. I used to think love wasn't a scoreboard. But here's the first thing I need you to hold on to, because it matters later. I never told them what I did. Not the appointments. Not the deposits. Not the money. None of it. I kept the receipts in a brown folder in the bottom drawer of my desk, and I never said a word. Why? That's the question. Keep it with you. Why would a woman do everything and tell no one? I promise you the answer is not what you think. The anniversary party had been Daniel's idea, and from the start, it was Daniel's show. He booked the hall. He chose the band. He printed invitations on thick cream cardstock with gold lettering. And he stood in our parents' living room and described, in detail, the slideshow he was making. A tribute to 40 years, he called it, and our mother pressed her hand to her chest and said, "Oh, Daniel, you think of everything." I was sitting 6 feet away. I had just transferred $4,000 to cover the catering deposit, because Daniel's grand vision had run into a small problem the week before. The deposit was due. And Daniel's account, as it turned out, was a grand vision too. He'd called me at 7 a.m., panicked. "Claire, I just need a bridge. 2 weeks, 3 tops. Don't tell Mom and Dad. I don't want them stressed about money on their own anniversary. Let me give them this. Please. Let me give them this." So I wired the money, and I let him have the moment, and I sat on that couch and watched my mother glow at my brother, and I said nothing. That was Wednesday. The text telling me not to come arrived the following Tuesday. I called my mother the next morning. I told myself I'd be calm. "I am always calm, Mom," I said. "I got your message." There was a long pause. I could hear the radio in the background, the one she keeps on the windowsill, the same one that's been there since I was a girl. "Claire," she said, and her voice had that careful, smoothing over tone she uses when she's already decided something. "It's just, Daniel's worked so hard on this. And you know how the two of you are at events. The tension. We don't want any tension. Not on our day. Tension. I wanted to ask her what tension. I wanted to ask her when, in 52 years, I had ever once caused a scene. I wanted to tell her that I was the one who paid for the very party I was being uninvited from. Instead, I said, "Okay, Mom, I understand. And here is the second thing I need you to hold on to." When I hung up that phone, I did not feel angry. I felt tired. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from spending your whole life proving you matter to people who have already decided you don't. It's not loud. It doesn't slam doors. It just sits down in the middle of your chest and stops trying. So I made a decision. I decided I would stay home on Saturday, but before I stayed home, I drove to the Lakeside Hall. It was Thursday afternoon, 2 days before the party. I told myself I was just going to confirm the catering, the deposit I'd paid, make sure the money I'd spent was actually being used. The event coordinator at Lakeside was a woman named Rosa. Warm eyes, clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield. When I gave her my name, something flickered across her face. "Claire," she said slowly. "You're the daughter? Claire?" "That's me." And then she did something strange. She set the clipboard down. She looked over her shoulder like she was checking for someone. And she said very quietly, "Can I show you something?" Loop opened. Here's where my own story stopped being the story I thought I was in. Rosa led me to a small office behind the main hall. On the desk was a binder, the event file. She flipped it open to the payment records, and she pointed to a line, and she watched my face. The catering deposit was there. $4,000, paid, under my name. But it wasn't the only thing under my name. The hall rental? $8,000. The band, the flowers, the cream cardstock invitations with the gold lettering, all of it. Every single line, paid by me. I don't understand, I said. I only paid the catering. The deposit. $4,000. Rosa turned the binder toward me. "Ma'am," she said gently, "every payment for this event came from the same account. Yours. Your brother set it up. He's listed as the planner. But the card on file, the transfers, the name on every receipt, it's all you." I sat down. I had to. Because I finally understood what bridge loan had really meant. Daniel hadn't borrowed $4,000 from me. Daniel had been spending out of an account he'd quietly attached my name to for months. A joint account I'd opened with him years ago, back when our father was sick, so that one of us could always pay the medical bills if the other couldn't. I'd forgotten it even existed. Daniel hadn't. The entire party, the whole beautiful show he was being praised for, I had paid for all of it. And he had made very, very sure I wouldn't be in the room to know. Now, stop here with me for a second, because this is the part of the story where you expect me to tell you what I did next. The confrontation, the screenshot, the group text where I expose everything and watch him burn, that's what I wanted to do. I'll be honest with you. Standing in that little office, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not sadness, heat. I took out my phone. I started typing a message to my mother. I had the bank statement open in the other hand. My thumb was over the send button, and then I stopped. Because Rosa said one more thing. She said, "There's a note in the file. From your brother. About the slideshow." And she turned the page. Loop. Opened. Hold it. Because what was on that page changed everything. But I'm not going to tell you yet. First, you need to know why I didn't send that text. I didn't send it because of a memory. When Daniel was 9 and I was 13, our father lost his job. For one whole winter, we didn't have much of anything. And I remember my mother sitting at the kitchen table at night, after we were supposed to be asleep, with the bills spread out in front of her, doing the same thing I would spend my whole life doing, the work nobody sees, the sacrifice nobody thanks you for. And I remember thinking, even at 13, I never want her to feel alone like that again. That's the answer. That's why I did everything and told no one. Not because I was a martyr. Not because I wanted credit later. Because somewhere along the way, I had decided that the greatest love is the kind that doesn't announce itself. That real devotion is silent. That if you truly love people, You protect them from the cost of loving you. I had built my entire life on that belief, and standing in that office, with the proof of my brother's betrayal in my hands, I realized something that knocked the heat right out of me. Daniel had built his entire life on the exact same belief, except backwards. He had learned to take silently, the same way I had learned to give silently. We were two halves of the same wound. Our parents had simply only ever clapped for one of us, so I didn't send the text, I deleted it, and instead, I asked Rosa for a copy of the file. All of it, every receipt, not to destroy my brother, for something else. Saturday came. I stayed home, exactly as I'd been told. I sat in my kitchen, in the quiet with my cold tea, and I imagined the hall filling up. The band warming up. My mother in the blue dress she'd told me about months ago, before any of this, back when she still talked to me about little things. At 7 p.m., my phone rang. It was Rosa. Claire, she said, and she was nearly whispering. It's happening now. The slideshow. You need to hear this. I'm putting you on, okay? Just listen. And this is the part I will remember until the day I die, because the note Daniel had left in the event file, the one Rosa turned to, the one I made you wait for, was the script for the slideshow's final slide. The big emotional finish. The tribute to 40 years of marriage. And on it, Daniel had written one line. A line he intended to read aloud, to 200 people. As the music swelled and the lights came down, he had written, "And none of tonight would have been possible without one person." I had assumed, God forgive me, I had assumed it would be his own name. A final flourish. The planner taking his bow. It was not his name. Through the phone, across the distance, I heard my brother's voice come over that microphone, and it was shaking. 40 years, he said. Mom, Dad, 40 years. And I stood up here all night and let you all think I did this. The hall, the band, all of it. A long pause. The room had gone silent. But I didn't. I haven't been able to do much of anything right for a long time. The truth is, I've been struggling. Badly, for years. And there's someone who covered for me. Who's always covered for me. Who paid for tonight and never asked for credit. And who I... His voice broke completely now. Who I told not to come. Because I was too ashamed to stand next to her and pretend I was the good one. And then my brother said my name into that microphone. Claire. My sister Claire paid for everything. And she's not here. Because of me. I want to tell you that I felt vindicated. That this was the public reversal, the justice. The moment the quiet woman is finally seen. And it was. But that's not what I felt. What I felt, sitting alone in my kitchen, listening to a room full of people I couldn't see, was grief. Because I finally understood that my brother hadn't excluded me out of cruelty. He'd excluded me out of shame. He had spent his whole life being the one who got the flowers, and he had finally figured out that he'd never once earned them, and he could not bear to stand in the same room as the person who had. The text that broke my heart hadn't come from a villain. It had come from a drowning man who couldn't stand to be saved in front of an audience. Then, I heard my mother's voice. Rosa must have walked closer, because suddenly it was clear and close and trembling. My mother had taken the microphone. Where is she? My mother said. Not to the room, to Daniel. Where is your sister right now? And Daniel said, Home, Mom. I told her not to come. And my mother, my careful, smoothing over Daniel glowing mother, said, into a microphone, in front of 200 people, the words I had waited 52 years to hear and had long ago stopped expecting. Then the party isn't finished. Because I have spent 40 years being celebrated tonight, and it turns out I never once thanked the person who held this whole family together. I owe my daughter an apology I should have made 20 years ago. And then she said, Somebody get my coat. They came to my house. All of them, in a way. But first, just two, my mother in the blue dress, and Daniel, still in his good suit, his eyes red. My mother stood on my porch and she did not smooth anything over. She said, I made it so easy to lean on you that I forgot you were a person who could fall. I'm sorry, Claire. I'm so sorry. And Daniel couldn't even speak at first. He just held out the brown folder. My brown folder. The one from the bottom drawer. The receipts. The 11 months of Tuesdays. The deposits. Somehow, over the years, he'd found them. He'd known. He'd always known what I did and never said. I kept them, he said, because someday I wanted to be the kind of man who could pay you back. I'm not him yet, he swallowed. But I told the truth tonight. That's the first thing I've done right in a long time. I did not let him off easy. I want you to know that. We sat at my kitchen table, the same kind of table my mother once sat at with the bills spread out, and we talked until 3 a.m. about the money. About the account. About all the years of silence, his and mine. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a decision you make again every morning for a long time. But we started. So here's what I learned, and then I'll let you go. I spent 52 years believing that love is the work you do in silence. That if you truly love people, you carry the weight and never let them hear you strain. I was wrong. That's not love. That's hiding. And when you hide your sacrifices, you don't protect the people you love. You just teach them they can take you for granted. And you teach yourself that you deserve to disappear. The bravest thing I ever did wasn't paying for that party. It was finally letting myself be seen, my parents. Anniversary is in a folder of photographs now. There's one picture I keep on my refrigerator. It's not from the hall. It's from my kitchen at 2 a.m, the three of us around a table, exhausted and honest for the first time in decades. That's the real anniversary. The night this family finally told the truth, my mother texted me, "Don't come." So I stayed. And staying home that night was the thing that finally brought me home. So let me ask you, if you were Claire, would you have sent that text and exposed your brother? Or would you have stayed silent one more time? And the harder question, do you think Daniel deserved forgiveness? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and if you've ever been the quiet one, the one who does the work nobody sees, this story was for you. Stay a little longer. I have more of them.